As is pretty much annual tradition, I decided I was going to list the most underrated and overrated player on every basketball team, and we're starting off with part 1 going under the underrated players. If you end up enjoying this video, please be sure to give it a like, and soon part 2 going over the most overrated player on every team will be out as well. But let's get into it. Before I get into today's video, I want to talk about our sponsor, PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the best daily fantasy app out there, and to me, the best thing about PrizePicks as someone who is fairly new to this space is really just how simple and easy it is to use. You look at the players' projected stats, and you pick whether you think they will either get more or less of what was projected. It is you versus the projections rather than you versus other players. You pick 2 to 5 of those players, and if you get all of them right, you can win max money, or you can choose a flex play and still go positive even if you get one wrong. And in following with the theme of this video, for today's entry, I made a point to make bets on some of the players on this list. But while I'm going to stick around in the NBA space because that's just my area, there are also projections available for NASCAR, NFL, MLB, soccer, all of that. And what's great for you if you haven't downloaded PrizePicks already is that first-time users that use my code RUSTY will get a 100% instant deposit match up to $100. So if you put in 50, you will receive 50 from PrizePicks, etc. So click the link in the description to download PrizePicks and use code RUSTY to double your deposit up to $100. Thank you to PrizePicks for sponsoring this video. Also, one more thing, there should be a live podcast pretty soon after this video is going up, so make sure to tune in for that. The link is going to be in the description. With all that out of the way, let's finally get to this list. For the Milwaukee Bucks, very ironically, I'm going to have to select Brook Lopez. The season that Brook Lopez has been having at the age that he's been having it has truly been shocking, and as someone who's been Brook Lopez's self-proclaimed biggest hater over the past couple of years, he's pretty much filled out every issue that I had with him in the past and is no longer even remotely any kind of problem. He's fantastic defensively. In fact, he should probably be top 3 in Defensive Player of the Year voting, and he's hitting his threes, he's scoring in general. Could not be doing any better, honestly. For the Boston Celtics, I'm going to go with Grant Williams. Sometimes I feel like people don't realize just how quite good of a role player Grant Williams is. He's probably going to end up continuing the legacy of PJ Tucker because he's actually, ironically, a very similar player, but something that he has that PJ never did is he's been a lot better in the rim pressure department, especially this year. So he looks to add to his game already while being a fantastic 3-and-D player. For the Cleveland Cavaliers, I'm going to go with Dean Wade. He has not played much of late. He played to open the year and then got hurt, but before he did get hurt, he was hitting his threes and playing pretty good defense at the small forward position, and for a team that's been struggling to figure out what they're going to do at that 3 spot, he seems like a not bad fallback option for whenever he does return from injury. For the Brooklyn Nets, I'm going to go with Nicholas Claxton. Nick Claxton has been one of those players over the past few years who's really been more of a theory than an actual player. One of those guys who you think like, yeah, there's a world where this guy is good and he contributes and we know that. But is he doing it right now? Well, he's finally doing it right now, and alongside Ben Simmons is making for one of the best defensive big men duos in the entire NBA. For the Sixers, I didn't really have a great answer, so I just went with Paul Reed, aka B-Ball Paul. Paul is somebody that Sixers fans just absolutely love. He is like one of the fan favorites. At least he was. Now that he's more conventionally actually important to their rotation, I do think there's maybe less love for him than there was when he was just a garbage time player. And he still doesn't play a lot of minutes because ultimately if you're playing center and Joel Embiid is on your team, how much opportunity are you going to get? But I will say, in the couple, I think it's like 4 games where he's played over 20 minutes this year, averages a double-double with 2 blocks on good efficiency. So I do think Paul Reed is probably pretty damn good, but just unfortunately due to his circumstances isn't really going to stand out in Philly. For the New York Knicks, I decided to go with Quentin Grimes. Quentin is probably my favorite player on this entire Knicks roster. In fact, I don't even know if there's a probably about it. I think it's definitely him. He is a really good three-point shooter and a just phenomenal defensive player, and he's definitely shown capability of being a shot creator. As of right now, he projects to be a phenomenal 3-and-D guy, but I would not be surprised if we fast forward 3 years and Quentin Grimes is averaging 18 points and being like in all defense consideration. For the Miami Heat, I went with Caleb Martin. Again, a team that I didn't think had a particularly underrated player, but Caleb is a pretty good rotational player. He's been hitting his threes this year, at least last time I checked, and he's a pretty good defensive player, and I don't feel like many people outside of Miami's fan base realize just how significant a part of their rotation he is. For the Indiana Pacers, I decided to go with Buddy Hield. Buddy is someone who, for a while, I've been saying I don't really quite understand why so many people are so low on him. I understand he has shot selection issues. I understand he probably thinks he's better than he is, and I understand that he has defensive problems. So I do understand why there would be complaints about him. However, me personally, I just think that his three-point shooting is historically great, and because of that, he's a seriously valuable player, even if sometimes he's going to take a bad shot. And when I say historically great, I mean that. There are very few players who have better career three-point numbers than Buddy Hield. I actually made a point, I made a take where I said we should give Buddy Hield credit for being one of the best all-time three-point shooters because he is, and I got a bunch of pushback from that, but people are ignorant. For the Atlanta Hawks, I'm going to go AJ Griffin, a player who got a tip-in layup to beat my team in a really close game. So I don't particularly appreciate him, but as a rookie, he's been one of the biggest contributors in the NBA from this draft class, and Lord knows the Atlanta Hawks need every little thing they can get. For the Toronto Raptors, I believe OG Anunoby is the best perimeter defender in all of basketball, and you add that onto the fact that he can average a relatively efficient 18 to 20 on top of that, and I do think he's genuinely one of the most underrated players in the league. Like, at that point, what more can you really ask for other than playmaking, which he's not bringing to the table? But other than that, he's pretty well-rounded, hits his threes, can create off the dribble, really good in transition, really good at driving. For the Chicago Bulls, I decided to go with Ayo Dosunmu. I was really torn between him and Javonte Green, and I guess I would say the average fan maybe knows just slightly less about Javonte Green, but I think Ayo gets a little bit more edge in the underrated department simply because I don't know that a lot of people project the potential onto him that I really think he has. I think he has displayed the ability to be basically probably like a B+ to maybe even just as good at his best version of Drew Holiday, because he's a super good defender. He can hit his open threes. He has really good playmaking instincts, pretty good with not turning the ball over, and he has displayed some mid-range shot creating ability and really a lot of ability off of the bounce. So yeah, Ayo Dosunmu I think could potentially be a star caliber player in the future. At the bare minimum, his floor is where he is right now, which is already a really quality role player with the potential to become one of the best role players in the league and potentially even exceed that. For the Washington Wizards, I am going to go with Kyle Kuzma. Yet another player this season who has gamed on my team. This one just 2 days ago or 3 days ago, so I really appreciate it. But Kyle Kuzma is averaging 28 and 5 on good efficiency and playing pretty good defense, hitting his three-pointers, really good off of the drive. One of many players in Washington just kind of figuring it out, but he is pretty good, and whatever team trades for him, especially if it's a contending level team, we might be surprised that he has more impact than originally thought. For the Orlando Magic, I'm going to go with Markelle Fultz, just simply because I feel like a lot of people forget that Markelle Fultz even exists to begin with. But he's reached a point where, so long as he is healthy, Markelle Fultz is giving you good production. Really, the only thing is that his jump shot isn't great, other than it's pretty alright from mid-range. But I do think his three-point percentage this year has been pretty good, but it's also been on super low volume, so I wouldn't really know what to say about it. All I know is I think Markelle Fultz, if he even got some semblance of a three-point shot back while maintaining his mid-range ability, his driving ability, his playmaking, having the size that he does, and if he's just able to remain healthy, I do think there's a world where he still reaches star level potential. But at the bare minimum, super valuable as a floor general for this team. Their offense just looks so much better when he's out there, because a lot of people don't seem to realize this, but Markelle Fultz has taken some massive leaps in his playmaking department since joining the league, and it's given him a new way to be super valuable, being that he's not going to be the crazy scoring threat that it was hoped that he would be entering the league. For the Charlotte Hornets, I'm going to go with Dennis Smith Jr. Dennis Smith started the season off really nice. Now I would just say he's a fine backup point guard, but that does at the very least mean that he has secured himself a position in the NBA, something that was really unclear before this. So overall, that's a W, and Dennis Smith deserves the shout out for being an NBA player, which was very up in the air. And for the Detroit Pistons, I'm going to go with Jalen Duren. Frankly, Jalen has arguably been like the third, at the very least fourth best rookie out of this entire draft class. And honestly, I do believe that he has star level potential at the center position. And I do think that just because of him, Cade, and Jaden Ivey, all three of those guys and what their future has in front of them, I'm really hoping that Victor Wembanyama ends up in Detroit, because that core four is going to be phenomenal. And having Jalen Duren and Victor as your defensive backcourt, oh my, or is it front court? I always flip the two. Whatever. I didn't really say that much about Duren. Double-double machine if you give him enough minutes, and really good defender and capable shot blocker. Just like any other big man, sometimes has fouling issues, sometimes has discipline issues, but I'd say they're pretty good for a young player right now, and he definitely has a ton of upside as a shot blocker and rim runner and rebounder, all that. For the Denver Nuggets, I decided to go with Aaron Gordon. Yeah, we're in the Western Conference now. Aaron Gordon's playing like an all-star this year, and frankly, since his numbers are as good as they are and the Denver Nuggets are the first seed, kind of feels like he should be that guy. So, yeah, Aaron Gordon. I know that a lot of people outside of the world of the Nuggets are just aware of how good AG has been. For the Memphis Grizzlies, I'm going to go with Jaren Jackson Jr., another team I didn't think had too many particularly underrated players, but Jaren is probably, if he gets a few more games under him, probably leading the DPOY conversation. He's averaging over 3 blocks, I believe, having his versatility as always. So the defensive player that I thought he could be going into the league is finally coming to fruition, and he deserves credit for that. For the Pelicans, Trey Murphy, he did not play much at all last year, so he's basically ostensibly a rookie. The way that he has been producing this year for someone who's basically just now getting their footing in the league, pretty phenomenal. He's a really good 3-and-D player, really good athlete, really good transition guy, but especially the 3-ball. Like, when I say 3-and-D player, I don't mean like he's a 37% on 3 attempts guy. I mean there is a potential that Trey Murphy is like a Cam Johnson tier shooter. He's really good, fits perfectly on that Pelicans team. For the Phoenix Suns, I'm going to go with DeAndre Ayton, and I really think DeAndre Ayton is specifically underrated by his organization. I don't understand why this franchise has seemed so reluctant to have DeAndre Ayton on the team ever since they've gotten him. It almost seems like they're bitter about the fact that they picked him over Luka Doncic, even though that's not his fault. Seriously weird the way that Robert Sarver treated him. He has issues with the head coach now. The fact that they've never really looked to advance his ability as a player, never really looked to incorporate him more in the offense, or I'm not saying there's been no effort, but like really, it doesn't feel like they realize that they have a potential generational big man, and instead they decided they're going to make him mediocre. And I mean, he's better than mediocre, but he's not living up to his potential, and I think it's pretty much entirely on Phoenix, not him. I'm really hoping, because he's trade eligible, like either today or tomorrow, I'm really hoping he goes somewhere else, and I'm really hoping that team actually understands what they have. For the Los Angeles Clippers, I am going to go with Ivica Zubac. I probably said that wrong, but he is a just really solid center all around, and he looks like me, so There you go. For the Sacramento Kings, I'm going to go with Malik Monk. As much conversation as there has been about how good Kevin Huerter has been for them this year, it's worth mentioning that Malik Monk off of the bench has also contributed quite a bit. A ton of shooting going on in Sacramento. That sounds bad outside of a basketball context. For the Portland Trailblazers, I'm going to go with Jeremy Grant. I don't know how many people are aware that Jeremy Grant's averaging like a hyper efficient 22 and playing some of the best defense of his career. Pretty big deal there. So yeah, Jeremy Grant, as someone who was a super fan of him in OKC and Denver, I didn't love what he became in Detroit, but now since then in Portland, he's been the perfect mix of both of those players, where he has the role player elements, but he's also able to be a shot creator and a scorer. And now he's doing it pretty efficiently, unlike in Detroit where he had passable efficiency, but it was pretty clear that a 15-point per game guy was trying to be a 22-point per game guy. Now he's actually a 22-point per game guy legitimately. For the Utah Jazz, I'm going to go with Malik Beasley. Malik is still one of the best three-point shooters in the league and in the right system capable of averaging 20 points. For the Dallas Mavericks, I decided to go with Josh Green. He has been one of the better 3-and-D younger players in the league, I would say, and he's probably the only coveted asset that they really have on that team other than their future first-round picks. But he's a pretty good rotational player, probably debatably should be starting over the likes of Tim Hardaway Jr., although Jason Kidd messes with the lineup so much, so I don't even know what their starters are at this point. I know Christian Wood's finally in there, which it's about damn time, but regardless, Josh Green's pretty good. For the Minnesota Timberwolves, I decided to go with Naz Reid. And here are some stats. These are from the last 2 years, and I think it's like 10 games or like 9 game sample. In any game that Naz Reid has played over 30 minutes in over the last 2 years, he averages 22.6 points, 13.3 rebounds, and 2 blocks per game. And I don't remember what the exact shooting splits were, but I know they were good. Dude can score in the post. He has a capable jumper from mid-range and from 3. Pretty solid defensively, pretty good rebounder, good at second chance points and all of that. Naz Reid might legitimately be like a really good starting big man, and he has 2 all-star centers in front of him. For the Golden State Warriors, I'm going to go with Kevon Looney. It really feels like people are always trying to replace Kevon. Like, there's always an article that comes out at the trade deadline about how the Warriors need an upgrade at center. And here we are, multiple championships later with Kevon Looney being their best center. I think it's at least 2, right? Who cares? It works. Kevon Looney's a fine center, and the Warriors are usually so good. Doesn't matter. Really don't need to be looking to replace him to the degree that it seems like the media and fans always are. For the OKC Thunder, I'm going to go with Aleksej Pokusevski, who has been one of the better players for them this year, a little under the radar, and the Thunder have been surging lately, so look out for them. But he's kind of a jack of all trades type of player. He's both weirdly a good shot blocker and perimeter defender, and also hitting his threes and capable of making plays off of the dribble for himself and his teammates. He looks like an alien, and he has a really fun name to say. Not bad. For the Lakers, I'm going to go with Lonnie Walker. Lonnie has really been everything they could ask him to be from free agency, signing for as little money as he did. I believe, again, I should have checked some stats before doing this because this is like the 4th time I've said this. But last I checked, he was averaging like 16, 17 points a game and doing so on good efficiency, hitting his 3-pointers. What more can you ask? For the Spurs, Devin Vassell has quickly reached my vision of him being a 20-plus point per game scorer, which I super duper appreciate. He really has a lot of shades of Chris Middleton. That's really the comparison that he gets quite often, and I think it's apt. He's a larger, long wing, but kind of scrawny. Pretty all right defensively, but he has a good 3-ball, good mid-range pull-up, decent enough handle, functional handle. I think he has a lot of way to go, and he'll be a much better player than he is right now, but he's already quite a spectacular player. And last, with the Houston Rockets, I think this answer is kind of obvious, which is ironic because then is he that underrated? But Alperen Sengun, he's been getting a lot more coverage lately. I think he recently had a triple-double, which helps, but also Anthony Edwards made some comments to the media about how the Rockets should be building around him and not KPJ and Jalen Green. I do think there's some truth to that. I do think they should look to just really treat Alperen Sengun like he's the foundational piece of their offense and their offensive engine, and see what they can do with that. Maybe he doesn't end up being like the Nikola Jokic light that a lot of people are suggesting, but if he's not, then what did you waste by trying? You know, I don't think you need to keep seeing Jalen Green take bad contested mid-range shots to realize that he's capable of taking bad contested mid-range shots. We've learned what we can about him. I do think we should do more to see what we can learn about Alperen Sengun. Anywho, also I used Sengun's last name for my D&D character, so I just thought you should know that. Anyways, shout out to Rudy for editing this video, shout out to Prize Picks for sponsoring it, and that is it. Goodbye.